This is the Dog Savant podcast with your host, Brett Endies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dog Savant podcast. This is episode 40. I am Brett Endies. I am your host. I am a professional dog trainer. I've been doing this for quite some time. I am a problem behavior and basic obedience specialist. I help new puppy owners raise their dogs in a proper way. And the goal is to create balanced dogs or resolve their issues to get them to a state of balance, peace for both dogs and owners. Where do I come from? Why do I say what I say and teach what I teach? Doing what I do, I find that it works based on many unrelated people telling me that. So I want to be able to share this information with more of the online community, wherever you may be, if you can apply this and may be able to help your dog as well, which it has been. I've been getting your feedback. It's been amazing. With that said, if you have any dog training questions or want to share your stories with me, email me, dogtrainingla@gmail.com. You can also go on any of my social media at The Dog Savant, and my YouTube channel is youtube.com/dogtrainingla. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a good review, rate the podcast. That's how other people can find it. My goal is to really help as many dogs as possible. We're already getting some momentum, which I really thank all you people who've been listening regularly, all you've been sending in your questions. I'm really thrilled with this. Keep it going, keeps me going. Thank you so much. Also, I never mention this. I rarely do. I have a Patreon account. If any of you want to support the podcast, I'll be able to up the production value, allow me to maybe do more than one episode a week. It's patreon.com/The Dog Savant. Okay, so today's podcast, usually I'm giving some dog training information. You'll get an occasional rant, some personal stories thrown in. I wanted to talk a little bit about me, who I am. I have this long drive here ahead of me. I got at least 3 more hours to go. I'm late at night here in the desert. And I figured I'd just talk, kind of go heart to heart here. Really podcasts are not, it's intimate. It's, me sharing myself. Yes, a lot of it's just the information and what I do for a living, but what I do for a living is who I am. I wouldn't have become a dog trainer if I wasn't the person I am and had the background that I did. I don't want to get too into my early years at this point. Maybe we could talk about it with a child rearing podcast. I like to talk about parenting issues as well. But at an early age, I was a little different. I kind of had sensory processing struggles, ADD, Asperger's syndrome, whatever you might want to call it. But I really didn't, connect well with other kids. The adults had a hard time understanding me and relating to me. But I found with animals, I really had a connection. Around dogs, I always felt calmer. They seemed to gravitate to me. They were calmer around me. And the adults always noticed it. They called me Little Doolittle. It's just my thing. Even non-domesticated animals, dogs or cats. I had a grandfather who was very much into animals as well, and he would take me to the local agricultural college in Long Island, New York, and we go with the cows, the goats, the sheep, and all that too. I just felt more comfortable in the presence of animals. There was some kind of calming effect. At the time, little did I know it would become my lifelong career, but it was definitely a trajectory that it was noted. I took note, of course, as a child, but other adults as well. But it was never thought of. It wasn't a traditional career path, so it was just sort of just something that I had a way with animals, and that was about it. Fast forward, and I didn't have the easiest childhood. My parents were divorced. My mom worked really hard. I was mostly at her house. She was, really busy lady, so I was a latchkey kid, if you will. I did a lot of self-parenting, taking care of myself, and I learned how to be independent. That's why I'm a good business person. I can survive. I've been through a lot of struggles in my own life as an adult, and I learned how to come back twice as hard when things hit me, and I'll share more of that as well as we go on here. So anyway, it's not poor me. We all have had our struggles, but just to know that not everybody comes from, a silver spoon background. We didn't have a lot of money. And even my mother started to become successful. I still didn't have parents. It was just basically on my own. I had to figure it out. I had to work from when I was 12 years old with a penny saver route. Always had some kind of job, which I think only at this point, at almost 45 years old, has made me more than capable, both as a man, a human, a business owner, and most importantly, a parent. And I pardon, there'll be, things I talk about that might hit an emotional nerve. So, sorry if I get a little real here. If it's uncomfortable for you, so be it. If it's uncomfortable for you, maybe this isn't the realm that you want to delve into. Even dog stuff, you got to get deep. You got to talk about things that are going on here. You can't dance around and paint sunshine and roses. And if I'm going to get real with owners about their dogs, I certainly have an obligation to share myself and a little bit about who I am and what drives me to do what I do and interpret things the way I do as well. So, I was 18, went to school out in Colorado. I wanted to get as far away from home as possible, had no path at all, just went to liberal arts, barely got by with C average, dropped out again, went back another round the semester and a half later, did another 6 months, failed, took off, that was it. What am I going to do now? I'm almost 20 years old without anywhere to turn. No school. I don't, any medial job I was getting, I would do it for a few months, barely make a living, couldn't pay myself. I had to move back in with my parents, my mother, and, that was it. So I went back to school one last time, and I also said, well, let's do this for real. Let's go to be a vet. So let's take all these science courses. Let's get in there. Let's go get a job at a vet office. Let's, really convince them to hire you because of what you really want to do. And I got a good full-time job at a vet office in Long Island. And I was going to school as well at the same time with just my, pre-med type of classes. And quickly I learned that I'm really good at certain subjects and things like math and science, or at least chemistry, calculus, things like that. I am not. Biology I was great at, all the basic, more hard evidence things are great. But anything that requires calculations, my ADD is too strong. Couldn't get it done. But I had also, while working at the vet, started walking and sitting for clients' dogs of his practice, and it was a kind of a neat thing. And I kind of used my connection where the dogs were happy around me, took good care of them. I was always good at being responsible because of my upbringing of basically raising myself. So I knew how to care for an animal quite well. Even at that point, I had already owned my own dog when I was 19. So and I was really always overly responsible. I always knew if one thing, if I couldn't take care of my own self, I definitely would take care of others, better than that. And I did a great job. I was always on time, always showed up. Clients never had to worry. But I did realize, hey, there's a way you can make a living working with animals. And it might not have to be the traditional veterinary route, while I'm simultaneously failing out of all my pre-med classes. So I kind of had no other route to go but to quit school yet again for the third time and go full-time into the dog walking business. And after a few years, I had employees. It was great. I was making a living. I could pay my rent in New York. It was really neat. But I also knew that I was a slave to this business. On holidays, I could not spend with my family. I was out taking care of everyone's dogs. When the weather was bad, I was still obligated to get where I was going. And I also knew that I wanted to do more for these dogs. I didn't want to just take care of their basic husbandry. I wanted to help them. A lot of these dogs had leash issues. The owners would tell me about their separation anxiety. Don't walk by other dogs because they have reactivity. And at the time, training wasn't that popular. There was Uncle, I think it was Matty Margolis. He would do some spots on the local TV show. There was Matty. There was the other guy, with the pet guy with all the parrots and birds. He was a local New York personality. Just that was about all you get exposed to animals. It wasn't really like Cesar Millan and all the internet trainers and Insta-famous trainers and all that you have now. So it wasn't really like a young trainer or someone who loves dogs. It's really clearly as a path. There weren't any online training programs. So I just didn't know what to do. So I went in the phone book and looked up dog trainers. Hey, I'd call them and ask them, how did you get into it? And I saw this one school, the Academy of Canine Education in Fresh Meadows, New York. Anthony Jerome, old school Kohler method trainer, used choke chains, Vietnam veteran, was also a conductor on the New York subway. And he ran a dog training school and a small business of training clients' dogs on the side. And I called him and he, he ran a course. It was like a 4-month course, which you had to do 100 hours of hands-on with him. And he also taught a boot camp class. And I went through the course. I paid for it. And I just jumped right in because I already had these pet sitting clients. So I started getting them to hire me to train the dogs. And of course, I didn't know shit. I had a book knowledge and a little bit of an applied knowledge helping Anthony, but it's so different when you're on your own and these people are paying you. And I remember that first lesson. I was sweating. It was so nerve-wracking. And they were nice and polite and probably could sense I was green. And they were like, thanks, but no thanks. We'll get back to you, see if we want to use you. And I don't even know if there was any improvement at all, but I did it. I broke the ice. It's like a stand-up comedian going on stage for the first time. It's never going to be harder than that. And over time, over the years, I started segueing my business from a dog walking, pet sitting business to a full-time training business. Then I had my daughter, Skylar. And then I went back into daddy mode. So I put my business more or less on hold, moved to Colorado, and worked part-time at a small facility. I did a little daycare, but it was really hard to juggle because when you have a business, you have to put a lot of focus onto that. And I wanted to focus on my daughter. She was an infant. She's on the autism spectrum. There's a lot of obligations. So things went more to the wayside. So 10 years passes, and now here's where Brett's at. I'm 40 years old, living in Colorado, or almost 40. It was the winter of 2014, so I'm almost 40. Winter of 2013, I'm sorry. And my home got taken away from foreclosure. I lost everything because focusing on a child, trying to build a business, on a few hours a week time availability, you don't keep your clients and you don't maintain it, and it's choppy, and I lost everything. I ended up having to stay in hotels on my custody days, sleep in my car in winter. I tell people this story where you get smart, you get to the point you learn how to run the engine just to fill the cabin with heat and then kill it so you can get an hour of nap, and then when it gets cold enough, it wakes you up and you do the cycle throughout the night. And I still have some issues where I can't really sleep more than a couple hours. My girlfriend, we're working on this because I never really realized how bad it was, and now that I have this wonderful person in my life who's observing me and cares so much, wants to help me, it's something that, and I have a hard time. I'm sorry, guys, this is not easy, but I struggled and I didn't have anyone there who was looking out for me. I had to look out for my child and just had enough money to get these hotels so I could be there, and she would be with her mom and take care of her, on that end. But I wanted to not, just because I didn't have a place to live, not now be with my daughter, because you can't sleep in a car with a child. So I would just bite the bullet, just struggle, hustle, give cards out to dog owners. I knew I was supposed to be a dog trainer. That still, I knew it. I had the ability to make full-time living. It just kind of all fell apart. And long story short, my brother who lives here in where I live now in Los Angeles, he's like, well, look, I can't be out there, but can you come out here and just be with family and just talk to my friend? There was this gentleman named John who was a friend with his, who's produced some reality shows, and really kind of had an idea of what I did, and just had, the guy had insight, just had a feeling that where I was at, even though it was where my daughter lived, was not going to be best for me, for anyone, including her, because you can't be an effective parent if you're struggling financially and sleeping in your car in the dead of winter where your health and your safety's at risk, right? So I decided to move out to California. I was now 40 years old. And it was hard because everything I lived for was my daughter. That's all it is. But again, you can't be a good father if you're struggling and worried all the time and have anxiety of where you're going to sleep at night, or how you're going to feed her and you, or have a place for her to be together with. So I'm so sorry, guys. So I moved out to California. Had a struggle finding. I had a little bit of money I had saved up from an inheritance I had that I was at least able to. My father had died during all of this too. On top of it, I got some money, so I was able to move out there. And but I didn't have an ability to rent an apartment because my Rottweiler, and there's breed bans everywhere, but they're really strict about it in California because they have such a revolving door in apartments. They don't need my business. There's too much demand, so they weren't going to worry about the whole, oh, he's a service dog. It doesn't matter. So what I ended up doing was, through this gentleman John, who had his little Hollywood connections, was I ended up living in the actor Eric Roberts, the father of Emma, brother of Julia Roberts, guest house. And he was, and I became friends with them, and they were great to me, and they looked out for me like family when, all I had was just my brother out there, and I had struggled the first year in California, but at least I had a warm place to stay. I had people that, if God forbid I couldn't pay my rent, they would help me out. And if I am still forever in debt to them, because there was a couple instances where I couldn't pay my rent, and the last thing they would do is ever kick me out. They took care of it. There was a time when I wasn't, I always made the obligation to my daughter, if I move to California, I'll never go more than a few weeks without seeing you. And I would either drive out there or take a plane, and there was a time where I didn't have the money to get out there, and they got me a plane ticket so I could see her consistently. Okay, and now that things are going great, so let's now go, I'm in my 5th year in California. So far, I've done a pilot for Nat Geo. Okay, it didn't work out, but I was almost going to replace Cesar Millan. How about that? I had my own show on Facebook Watch. It wasn't a big thing, but almost 1 million views on some of the episodes. That's pretty cool. I got to share this thing that I've worked so hard at understanding and teaching people with so many people. I don't even know, maybe you help thousands of dogs. How awesome is that? And more than that, I get to see 30, 40 clients a week, and I'm busy, and sometimes I get stressed about it, but the reality is I'm helping all these dogs. I'm taking care of my daughter again. I'm paying my bills. I own a beautiful home. I have a wonderful relationship. And, this is all because I didn't give up. It was so hard. You don't even know what it is like. I'm still suffering from what I had to go through. The resentment of knowing that the people who supposedly love you aren't there to help you in any way, financially, give you a warm place to stay, not even give you a word of encouragement, other than my brother and a friend or two, and even then they were so far away physically, they couldn't do much for me, and they were struggling themselves, so financially they were handcuffed. So I don't blame them, but there are people who I do blame. And more than that, there's no words to describe the fear of knowing that you have to sleep in your car at night, and you need to go to sleep in a blizzard, and you have to kill the engine so you don't get carbon monoxide, but you don't want to die of hypothermia. And then in Colorado, where it's not as free about sleeping in your car as California, you get in trouble. You can go to jail for that. I would have to find very discreet places, hotel parking lots, drive around at night till businesses would shut down, and duck into industrial parks, park between semi-trucks, drive way out of the city to go to rest areas so I can at least legally sleep in my car. And then go to a rec center so I can get a shower in, so I could at least get that one client and present myself, so I could, get it, here and there sporadically. I still tried to have a business, but it just didn't work there. So when I moved here to California, it was a little bit of struggle, but the fruits of my labors paid off. And, even here in this podcast now, I'm not going to stop. There's a lot of people who even, who not only weren't there for me, who in a calculated way have made efforts to try to bring me down and stop my momentum, or keep me down when I was, pushed, really, really far back in life. Where at 45, I'm just starting to put things together. Where this should have happened 20 years ago, but I was focusing on other things, or I wasn't mature enough before I had my daughter, or I had not a good enough support system to learn the life skills as a kid, where I could then in my 20s be able to navigate things. And I would drop out of school all these times and no one was giving me any advice or direction. And boy, as a parent, I learned that you got to be present, you got to communicate, you got to say shit. Again, sorry for the therapy session here, but I want you to know who I am and where I come from. So let's go a little bit deeper, okay? As a kid, I also, because I said the ADD, the whole Asperger thing, I always struggled sensory-wise. I always had a low tolerance for frustration. I'd have a lot of thoughts that would culminate and become like almost a pressure in my head and body. External stimuli would become overwhelming. Social interactions were difficult and choppy. And, it's in a way how I relate to the dogs I work with, the sensory processing. It's like, why do you talk about dogs in this weird abstract way? You lost me. I see the comments on the videos and things. Many people get it. Many people are self-aware and they hear what I'm saying, or they apply it and they say, well, it might not make complete sense, but I think this guy might understand how my dog sees it. And look, when I do it the way he's recommending, it kind of works. And the people who don't, it's hard for them to maybe have the empathy to realize that not everybody is so straightforward in how they approach life. Not everybody can tune out everything. Some people just loud sounds, bright lights, smells, whatever it is, repetition of something, high-pitched little noises, going to a restaurant, not being able to filter out anything. That becomes so overwhelming, you feel like your insides are rattling, your teeth are itching. What do you think reactivity is? It's a dog that's in a hyper-alert state and their sensory system becomes overloaded and their reaction is a coping mechanism. It's like a meltdown for people on the autism spectrum. That's all it is. So I always recommend, they don't have enough work in this field with animals, but at least for humans and children, look up spectrum disorders, sensory processing disorders. It's a really common thing. Say, why do you talk the way you talk sometimes? Sometimes, you sound normal. Sometimes you just go on everything is intense at times. Not everything, but when you get in a certain mode, call it passionate, but it drives you. That's why people on the spectrum can do amazing things while at the same time struggling with filling a grocery list. That's why it's Savant. So I call myself the dog savant, to give people insight to, hey, when you're getting me, just hear the dog stuff, because the rest of the stuff I struggle with too, right? But it helps you relate to what your dog's going through. And I don't think I'm a dog, but I do understand sensory processing, and that's something I don't share enough. because I think it's bad for business. I don't want people to think that they have Rain Man coming to their house to work with them, because when I work with them, I'm on it. They don't think anything. They think I'm just the dog guy. I know what I'm doing. I'm confident. I'm giving them information that when applied works. But to relate to their dog, it's more than just book knowledge, more than just what I learned at the Academy of Canine Education from Anthony, who's still alive, I might add. I think he's still doing his thing. Good for him. Guy chain smoked. He would light up a cigarette in the middle of a client's living room. I mean, it was the 90s, but still, it was still not. It even looked like, what the? God bless you, Anthony. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even realize you can make a living doing this. So, I've seen people criticize him because of his methods. You know what? I haven't seen him do anything that would be considered abuse, even though others don't agree. And I do different training methods at this point as well. But, it's another thing. People got to realize that people have a life, a story. A lot of people get into this for the love of dogs, not for their ego. Most balanced trainers, most rational trainers, people speaking truth, it's because they know it works and they love what they do and they want to help these dogs and the owners. They don't need to show the world how great and humane they are. They know it. They're sleeping well at night because of it. And there's a lot of people that will, and that's even on the people on the spectrum. People make interpretations of, why is that person weird? Why does he talk this way? Why is he so direct and blunt? Or why does he not deal with this sound that I don't have a problem with? You got to have empathy. People are processing things a lot differently. And we still have to be grounded. It's not about me. Just because I have struggles doesn't mean I'm going to make it other people's problems. I just have to try harder or deal with more to sometimes navigate situations that for, neurotypical, which are your average wired people, aren't as challenging, but they have their own challenges as well. So I empathize and relate to them as just being a fellow human. And as dogs, they still have five senses and processing the information around them, but for some, their instincts drive them, and they get overstimulated by being too hypervigilant. And that's where all your reactions, impulse control issues, not knowing what to do, anxieties come from, So, well, thank you again for letting me share that with you. I really, really hope, I said in the last podcast, I don't want to go too into Pluto where I just go off on another planet where I try to stay on track. This one's really personal. We're not talking, much dog stuff here today. We're talking Brett stuff. Maybe if you go through this, you have a child that goes through this, you can relate to it. I hope to do more podcasts related to this subject because my daughter is on the autism spectrum. She's 13. She's a beautiful young woman doing amazing, but a lot of my ability to parent her was relating to what she goes through. It's a different wiring. It doesn't mean it's a broken wiring. It's just different. And harnessing that, not accommodating, harnessing and understanding really can help these kids, these adults bring out their gifts. And it's happening a lot more. When I was a kid, I was just considered gifted and I had tantrums and I get frustrated. They put me in a special class every day. But, now it's good. And through my daughter, I understand myself more. Through the dogs, I understand myself more. And I just feel fortunate I can just talk about, this in a way that's going to be able to help. Even though sometimes I do have my own struggles in everyday, life navigation. And a lot of times, even just when I'm trying to share the information related to dogs, I'm sure even we're here when I'm talking in this episode, someone might hear and be like, huh? I don't get it. That's okay if you don't get it. You can still be understanding and you can still try to get it or not. But, when you have to make a snide comment or, poo-poo the messenger when that messenger might have the experience to say what they say, maybe, you might want to go back to the drawing board or just go somewhere else where the message might resonate better with you despite, what works or what doesn't work. And I'm not the only one with a message that works. There's a lot of good dog trainers. There's a lot of people with insight in this world nowadays that are speaking rational and self-aware, information or promoting that because we're living in a very emotional, feeling-based way where facts are secondary to how people's opinions tell them it should be, which is in many cases completely off kilter. All right, so that is getting into Pluto, so I'll kind of bring it back here full circle. For me, I wanted to do a couple podcasts here on this long drive, so if you listened to last week's episode, I did a back-to-back. This is the same day. I'm driving through the desert still, I'm a couple hours out of Tucson, going to my archery seminar. Excited for that. That's what's going on for today. I'll keep you posted on how that went. Hopefully I'll do some recordings on the way back to California in a couple days. Again, please share, rate, review, subscribe to this podcast, The Dog Savant, on iTunes, on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel, youtube.com/dogtrainingla, and on my website, dogtrainingla.com. You can go to anywhere, from that website. If you're local in the Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley area, I can help you. If you have any dog training needs or questions I can answer, please do not be hesitant to contact me. Okay, good. Boy, this stream of consciousness thing is not easy, and I just I unloaded some stuff here on you guys. So thanks again for letting me listen. I'm very, very gracious, as you can tell. All right, guys, get out there with your dog, get out there with yourself, do the work. Thank you so much.